I still remember the first time I came face to face with a Salvador Dalí painting. I was 22, wandering through the Reina Sofia in Madrid, half lost, half looking for air conditioning, when the great masturbator suddenly hovered in front of me like a hallucination. The canvas was huge, the colors almost fluorescent, and the imagery, grasshoppers, melting noses, Gala's unreachable body, felt equal parts nightmare and seduction. I stood there far too long, blocking tourists' photos, until a guard politely asked me to move. As I walked away, I heard a couple whisper, "He must have been on something." I smiled, because the idea is intuitive. Surely you need chemical help to conjure visions that elastic. Years later, I discovered Dalí's famously defiant response. "I don't do drugs. I am drugs." That sentence electrified me. It isn't just a witty comeback. It is Dalí's entire creative manifesto condensed into 6 words. He refused the notion that inspiration had to be imported. Instead, he insisted it could be manufactured internally, distilled from memories, obsessions, terrors, and a meticulous technique he called the paranoiac critical method. As a woman who often doubts whether my own imagination is wild enough, Dalí's arrogance felt oddly liberating. He was saying, in effect, that we are each capable of being our own controlled substance. We can intoxicate ourselves and others through the disciplined staging of our subconscious. To understand how he got there, we should rewind to Figueres, Catalonia, in 1904. Dalí was born 9 months after his older brother died of gastroenteritis, and his parents promptly named the new baby Salvador as well. When he was 5, they took him to his brother's grave and declared him the reincarnation of the first Salvador. Imagine the psychological vertigo, being told you are both yourself and someone else, an echo walking in flesh. Dalí later said he grew up playing at being a ghost, forever split between identities. A drug, after all, alters perception. And Dalí's perception was altered by family narrative before he could even read. He entered art school in Madrid, where he wore waist-length hair and purple socks, and was expelled for telling his professors they weren't competent to judge his work. He drifted to Paris, fell in with Breton Surrealists, and then quickly became too flamboyant even for them. André Breton anagrammed Salvador Dalí into Avida dollars, mocking his hunger for fame and money. But Dalí didn't flinch. He adored publicity, calling it the worst drug neither law nor morality has yet banned. Here again, he was the substance. He would flood the bloodstream of culture and make us dizzy on him. Central to Dalí's personal mythology was Gala, the Russian émigré 10 years his senior who became his muse, lover, manager, and occasional tormentor. Their relationship scandalized polite society. She was married to the poet Paul Éluard when she and Dalí met, and she never stopped taking other lovers, even as she negotiated Dalí's contracts and guarded his brand. Dalí painted her as a Madonna, a sphinx, a levitating saint. In private, he called her his oxygen. I find their partnership strangely symmetrical. Dalí was the drug, Gala was the syringe, directing and controlling the dosage the public received. Then there is the mustache, thin, black, and curled skyward like parentheses seeking a sentence. Dalí treated it as a living sculpture. He insured it with Lloyd's of London, stiffened it with sugar water, and claimed it minded its own business. It's easy to dismiss this as gimmick, but I see the mustache as a minor act of surrealism, an ordinary bodily detail, exaggerated into an independent character. Watching archival interviews, I noticed that reporters often stare at the whiskers, hypnotized. Once again, Dalí is administering himself. The interviewer is already high. But what does it mean, practically, to be drugs? Dalí's paranoiac critical method, developed in the early 1930s, required him to enter a controlled state of self-misinterpretation. He would stare at random textures, wood grain, damp walls, even tins of baked beans, until faces, monsters, or erotic tableau appeared. He would then freeze those hallucinations on canvas with classical precision borrowed from Renaissance masters. The result is disorienting because it obeys two contradictory logics: dream fluidity and photographic detail. The eye believes the object is real, while the brain rebels at its impossibility. That tension, Dalí argued, delivers a chemical jolt to the viewer, a microdose of madness. I felt that jolt again when I finally saw the persistence of memory at MoMA. The painting is tiny, just 24 by 33 centimeters. Yet those limp clocks dominate your field of vision as though they were billboard-sized. Standing in front of it, I noticed something I'd missed in reproductions. The cliffs in the background are rendered lovingly, almost conservatively, like plain air landscapes. They anchor the delirium with realism, the way a medical drip controls the flow of morphine. I realized Dalí wasn't offering unfiltered chaos. He was administering chaos through the narrow needle of craftsmanship. That is alchemy, not accident. There's an irony in how the counterculture of the 1960s, awash in LSD and psilocybin, adopted Dalí as a mascot. Timothy Leary reportedly invited him to psychedelic summer school. Dalí played along, painting the hallucinogenic toreador, whose 29 Venus de Milo shapes morphed into a bullfighter. Yet he privately mocked what he called chemical escapists, who needed pills to visit landscapes he could summon by will. As a woman who occasionally struggles with creative block, I wonder, was he right to dismiss external catalysts? I've written some of my most honest paragraphs after a glass of Rioja, but I suspect Dalí's point was less moralistic and more pragmatic. Drugs are temporary, while technique endures. If you train the hand, the eye, and the subconscious to cooperate, you can tap your internal pharmacy whenever you wish. No prescription needed. So where does that leave me? A modern woman who writes essays and doodles in sketchbooks between Zoom calls. I'm unlikely to rock a gravity-defying mustache, and I doubt the Met will ever host my scribbles. Yet Dalí's 6-word creed still pricks my skin. Perhaps its lesson is that art is less about what you ingest and more about what you exhale. It asks, can you be brave enough to mine your private terrors and desires, polish them with skill, and release them into the world undiluted? That process is inherently narcotic, first altering your consciousness, then your audiences. It doesn't require LSD. It does require vulnerability, rigor, and maybe a dash of shameless showmanship. Yesterday, I tried a tiny experiment. I stared at the cracks in my bathroom ceiling until the plaster morphed into an alpine landscape, complete with a crooked chalet and a goat the size of my thumb. I sketched it quickly, resisting the urge to fix its proportions. The drawing is awful by academic standards, yet looking at it now, I feel a strange electric buzz. I made something surreal without any chemical help, only with attentiveness, the way Dalí once squinted at baked beans. It's a small victory, but it proves the door is there. unlocked. Salvador Dalí died in 1989, yet his echo keeps surfacing. In fashion editorials, TikTok filters, even in the melted clock emojis teenagers send when homework is overdue. He remains an addictive substance in the cultural bloodstream, still warping perception decades after his atoms return to Catalan dust. When I hear that cocky proclamation, "I don't do drugs, I am drugs," I no longer hear pure ego. I hear a challenge. Transmute yourself into something intoxicating. Then offer it for others to sip, swirl, or slam like tequila. If we dare accept, perhaps we too can bend time, melt clocks, or at least soften the rigid hours of everyday life. And maybe, just maybe, someone will someday stand before our work, linger too long, block another viewer, and wonder what chemical sorcery made it possible.